One evening, whilst browsing the internet at home for ebooks and interesting text files to download ready to read on my laptop and pass those dull evenings when away on business trips. Hotel internet access here in the UK costs an absolute fortune. This was another step in my cost-saving measures. Most of the ebook sites that I found were charging to download files. Altering the search to include the word free, I was suddenly presented with hundreds of sites offering free downloads. Starting at the top, I casually clicked on the link and, not really taking much notice of the text, managed within a few seconds after getting into the site to get a list of files on the screen. Scanning down the list at the titles, I clicked on one and started to read. The first few lines indicated that this was a story about a maid. As the writing seemed quite competent, I downloaded it onto my computer along with another couple of files. Not having much time, I went back to the search engine intending to find some more when the phone rang. By the time I had finished the call with a business colleague regarding my next day's trip, there was no more time for browsing the internet. Second evening into the trip, I was alone in yet another hotel room and, not wishing to spend yet another evening in the hotel bar listening to the traveling salesmen bragging about their unique selling skills, I opened my laptop and started browsing the ebooks that I had downloaded, read one about gardening, then opened one about maids that I had gotten from the internet. Recognizing the first couple of lines, I started to read, but not for long. I was shocked that what I had imagined to be a story of times gone by when middle-class families had servants soon turned out to be something totally different, as the main character, a man, was forced to dress in a maid's uniform by his dominant wife. Closing the file, I ordered some coffee and supper from room service and took a shower. Just as I finished showering, there was a soft knock on the door and I opened the door. The waitress brought the tray down right next to my computer so that I could enjoy supper whilst I worked. As I sat there, the suspense of what happened in the story of the maid became too much, and somewhat guiltily, I opened the file and settled back and started to read. I was introduced to a world that I had no idea existed, having been brought up in a strict Christian family. I had quickly scanned the story, fascinated at what was being described. Soon I was reading it again, but this time slower. As I read for the second time, much to my surprise and embarrassment, I became aroused. The second story that I had downloaded was about a man who dressed in women's clothes. As he described putting on the underwear, I once again found myself becoming aroused. Sleep that night was disturbed, just as it often was when I had an important meeting the next day, but this time it was the stories that ran over and over in my mind. Even after coming home, I couldn't put those stories from my mind. When alone, I would browse the internet, avidly reading for hours on end. I read one particular story several times and each time found it more enthralling than the last. Slowly, I decided that I wanted to find out just what it felt like to be wearing lingerie. Janice, my wife of 20 years, had a charity evening to attend and I was alone at home, the perfect evening to try out my newfound fantasy. Once our car had disappeared off the drive, I poured another glass of wine, then went upstairs to our bedroom. For the first time I could remember, I opened a drawer where Janice kept her underwear. Looking at the plethora of silky and lacy garments, I lost my nerve and shut the drawer tightly shut. Finishing my glass of wine, I showered and put on a bathrobe and went back downstairs. Pouring another glass of wine, I sat at the computer and continued reading more cross-dressing stories that I had become almost addicted to. With so many men telling tales of their own cross-dressing, I convinced myself that there was no harm in it, and soon enough I was standing in the bedroom with Janice's lingerie drawer open before me. Janice was very particular in everything that she did, and her lingerie drawer was no different, with each bra and matching briefs carefully paired up. I selected a bra and matching briefs, and opening the bathrobe, I stepped into the pink silky briefs. The material was so soft and nice, so different to my cotton boxer shorts. My cock strained at the thin silky material and pushed the briefs down as it popped out of the briefs. I had learned enough about lingerie from my recent reading and watching Janice dress to know that the silky knickers were not quite what I had in mind. Slipping them off, I carefully folded them and replaced them along with the matching bra in the drawer. Examining each set in turn, I realized what I was looking for was not there. I shut the drawer and opened the next one down. There, laid out before me, was exactly what I wanted, with the exception of one gap, which I assumed was what Janice was wearing. Laid out before me was Janice's little miracle workers, as she called them, along with matching bras. My hand slowly moved across the items in the drawer. I selected a pink satin panty girdle and matching pink bra. I was surprised that the color seemed particularly important to me. The girdle was made of a shiny satin material with elastic inserts. I stepped into the panty girdle and carefully tugged it up into position. My erect cock once again strained at the material, but the panty girdle was far too strong to be pushed aside like the thin silky briefs that I had tried initially. The girdle was very tight, but, at the same time, felt nice. The way it supported and held me tightly all over, just like the men who wore them in the stories, was all I had imagined. I looked over at the mirror and saw just what Janice meant about her miracle workers. The girdle came a couple of inches above my waist, which now looked so slim. All signs of early middle-age spread had just about disappeared. Slipping off the bathrobe, I next took the bra and slid my arms through the straps. They were adjusted far too short. I slid the adjusters way down, noticing that there was a small mark where they had been set to, and made a mental note to ensure I replaced them exactly where they had been. Now, with the lengthened straps, I eventually managed to fasten the back. The empty cups lay nearly flat against my chest, just shaping the fat on my chest, just as the girdle had shaped my waist. The bra was, like the girdle, quite tight, but in a nice way. Together they felt good on. I slipped my bathrobe back on and must admit to feeling a little envious of Janice being able to wear them all the time. Making my way back downstairs, I soon noticed how my bathrobe slid across the satiny material and how nice it felt. After a few more glasses of wine while reading, yet again, that story that inspired my experiment, looking at the clock, I realized just how late it was. Janice would be home in an hour or two, and I still had the bra and girdle to replace. As I walked up the stairs, bathrobe sliding across the satiny material felt so good. In the bedroom, I took off the bathrobe and sat on the edge of the bed. Moving slightly, the cool white cotton material of the bedclothes slid across my girdle bottom. I lay back on the bed and turned slightly. So nice. Standing up, I lifted the duvet and slid in. Sandwiched between the crisp cotton sheets, I moved slightly, first one way then the other. The satiny material slid so easily across the sheets. I turned on my side and let my hand caress the bra cups, looking at the bedside clock, 10:15 p.m., just 5 more minutes, then put it all back and go back downstairs. As I thought how I would never do this again, I slid my hand from the bra and across the front of the girdle. My body jumped, as it does sometimes just as you are just beginning to fall asleep. Opening my eyes, I cursed my stupidity. Lying in the bed after drinking so much wine, I could have fallen asleep so easily. Just then there was a noise at the bedroom door. "Are you awake?" I heard Janice whisper, opening just one eye just a fraction. I looked at the clock, 11:50 p.m. My heart raced. I was sure that Janice would hear it thumping so loudly in my chest and know that I was awake. How on earth was I going to explain this? I tried to think of a way to escape detection. Sure that there was no way that I could just lie there waiting for Janice to explode. I could hear the sounds of Janice begin getting undressed for bed, the hiss of a zip, the click of her bra being unfastened, the soft footsteps as she walked around the bed. Then the movement as Janice got into bed. I was facing away from Janice and felt the bed move as she lay down. "Are you awake?" she whispered, just audible above the thump of my heart. She lay next to me in the bed with her back to me. My prayers had been answered. My plan was so simple, foolproof even. We were lying back to back. All I had to do was wait for Janice to fall asleep, then sneak out of the bed and take off her bra and girdle. Put them back in the drawer and never do anything like this again. Checking the clock, it had been 30 minutes since Janice had got into bed. Slowly I took the bed covers in my hand and got ready to slip from the bed, silently thanking my good luck for saving me. Just then I felt Janice shift in the bed. Her back touched mine. She shifted slightly again. My heart missed a beat, but Janice just lay motionless. Just wait another 5 minutes to be sure she was fast asleep, I decided. Laying there having escaped discovery, I started to feel really aroused. What a turn on being so nearly caught, but one that I would never want to experience again. Janice's body tensed, then she turned over towards me. I was facing away from her still. Her hand slid across my hip as she snuggled into my back. Slowly her body seemed to tense. Her fingertips slid across the silky material of the girdle up to the seam at the top. Her breathing changed and slowly she slid her hand to the bottom of the girdle, then up the front of my body until she reached the bottom of her bra that I wore. I heard a tiny sharp intake of breath as she explored the bra with her fingertips as if to make sure she wasn't imaging it. "Gerald, are you awake?" she whispered.